from Alaska.
My name is Michael Glynn. I'm from Seattle, Washington.
I'm Delbert Anderson, and my first clan is Folded Arms people, the Nat people.
My name is Reuel Lubag. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I'm a first generation. My folks emigrated from the Philippines, settled in the U.S.
Quartet started about 15 years ago with our core members Reuel, Lubag, Christian Fabian, myself at Littledield, and Jason Marsalis on vibraphone. And it was really great. We like all love swing music, you know, like just really grooving, and the jazz idiom, the jazz genre. And we were kind of thinking about how we could, there's a thing called the Great American Songbook, and there's hundreds of songs that everybody does, and they're really great standards, right? We all do them. But we're like, maybe we can make some more, and so more of those songs. And at least my concept was I wanted to do Tlingit, which is Alaska Native music inside of jazz. And so I took some melodies and then put them in the jazz genre. And then I was like, we're talking with Christian about this, and it's like, well, you're native of somewhere too, right? And so why don't you do something? He found this like 300-year-old song that his great-great-great-grandfather wrote, and it's cool. So we did that, and Reuel has Filipino heritage, and so we have some Filipino folk songs that we do. And then Jason is from New Orleans, and he did like, you know, the 150-year-old birth of jazz kind of songs, Elaba, you know. Yeah. Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Yeah, just some great tunes. So we're using the jazz genre to uplift our songs, our original songs that we grew up with. Also, Reuel has a great version of Brahms' Lullaby, and because he learned classical piano as a kid, and so you're like, here we go, let's do a jazz version of that. And jazz is so open that we can put things into it without changing the vibe. It's really a great. You can use a lot of different musics. Like any music can be played in jazz, which is very beautiful to me.
Well, I'd like to interject. Very humble here, because he actually one night he was telling us how he came to this, and it was like he had this vision, this dream, and. You
want the dream story?
Yeah, because it's important, right?
So my culture has a lot of rules on their music. Like we have clan ownership, and so whenever I was playing, somebody would be like, "Oh, Ed, you should do one of your clan songs." And I'm like, "No, I can't, because we don't change that. We don't do that." But then somebody was like, "Hey, why don't you use one of those dleguk, which are children's songs, and they're unowned by any clan?" And so I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I went to bed, and I was actually playing a drum in my dream, so something like this. I was playing a drum, going, just singing along, but I was sitting at a drum set. And then I put the drum down, and I started playing this groove and then singing that melody over the top. And with it, I woke up and I said, that's essentially what I have to do. And I wrote our first song. We performed it 3 days later, and 15 years later, we're still playing. So
I had to admit,
so, but yeah, just something about the, some people talk about dreams being ancestors, and I just realized that was probably somebody saying, you've got this and you've got this, you got to put them together. Are we friends? No.
Have your people come on.
Okay, so again, this is like the second iteration. Christian and Jason are both still playing and doing great things, but we added Michael on bass because we played other gigs with him. So that's that. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but Reuel and Michael have known each other for 25 years, doing other things. So I've known Michael 8-10 years, off and on. And then Delbert and I are pretty fresh, like 3 years, because Delbert is a jazz musician. And so I was like, let's combine this even more. Let's get another Dene musician. So that's that's kind of how we're connected. But yeah,
and friends.
Yeah, it's
And
really
I didn't know that until we met him.
Yeah, so Delbert's from the state of New Mexico, and I lived in New Mexico for 6 years, so we have a lot of musician friends that we know. And the jazz world is a very small world, so we all kind of know each other. Even people around the world, everyone knows each other. It's one of the nice things about the music.
And jazz is also so malleable, so like open. It's like a framework, but it's open. And so even if we don't play a ton with certain people, like we could bring in another musician, which is I think what we're going to do in a couple days in Kolkata, is to bring in some folk musicians to work with us. And so I think that's a beautiful thing about the art form. So even if it's like, let's say we get a new member. Tomorrow or something, we add a new member, we have charts, we have music, and they can still come in quite easily to our music.
10 years ago, and a couple of the songs that we picked up on the tour, we actually added to our book. It was like, oh, this is a great song, let's add it to our book. So it kind of in memory of the folks that we met in those countries. We've taken a couple there, like if we do it today,
we're going to do it
Aguacate, which is sort of the unofficial national anthem of Ecuador. It means the avocado. And then there was another one, there was the unofficial national anthem of Guatemala.
Luna de Shell.
Yeah, Luna de Shell, which is a love song about kind of unrequited love. And but it's a very famous composition by one of Guatemala's greatest actual composers from the early 20th century.
You get this show, or how did we actually arrive? I'll tell you how we actually got the gig, and you guys can tell how we arrived. So I got, I've done we've done a handful of embassy tours around the world, which is really amazing. We spent 32 days in Central and South America, just sharing with culture, and like it was just experiencing other music and then sharing our music too. Most recently in August, I was just in Finland doing a Sami festival, which is the indigenous people of Finland, Norway, Sweden, and northern Russia, so just the top part. And so they gave us a call a few months ago, said, are you available? And I said, yes, we are, let's do it. So that's how we got the gig. You guys want to share about how we arrived? All the 2.5 days or 3 days together?
It's a long travel to get here from Seattle. It's pretty much the opposite side of the planet. So we were on a plane for over 24 hours, just to get to Kolkata, and then there for a couple days. And
We're waking up.
Reuel and I got there on time, but our luggage didn't make it. And these two didn't. They missed their flight and Doha.
It was delayed. We did not miss our flight. It was delayed. We did not miss our flight.
So it was a process getting here, but of course it's all been worth it, and we're so glad to be here now.
Mm-hmm.
I know your thing that you have observed or saw in Nagaland, seen in Nagaland.
Tell me, want to take that one?
Yeah, I think a lot of sort of the elders where I come from, like traditional elders, they even though they don't know jazz music, when I tell them that I'm coming together with a bunch of people, they say it's more about respect, expression, and like collaboration. And so even though they don't know jazz or the music, they had this knowledge. And so I think something that's very different with this group is we're using jazz as we're making an avenue to preserve all of our cultural songs, old songs, stories. We're putting them in this jazz form, that way people can listen to it. In a way, a lot of the elders say, you're preserving our music by bringing it back and giving it to the audience. Maybe it might be a little different. It might not be the old, ancient way of doing things, but it's we live in a new age and time, and a lot of times, because I kind of have a similar quartet to this as well, and I had to go to my elders and ask, is it okay to play this song with everyone else? And they describe it as a spinning song. And a spinning song is they said, think of a tornado and how it brings all its environment together, and when it's mixed up, it spits it out, you know. And so they said, when you go on this journey, whoever you meet, whatever culture they're from, whatever their stories are, their history, you're gonna bring it together and, you know, work it out, and whatever comes out is the new sort of a collaborative story that we're all telling. So, and we're all come from different backgrounds, but that's one thing about jazz, and like the elder said, it's a community event that we're doing, and we're bringing in Ed, his personal likings, his culture, Michael's and Reuel's and myself, and that's what's going to make us very different from a lot of how, you know, the music's going to be sound, or the music sounds basically.
Try to, you know, correct those sort of misconceptions.
For in the States or
Generally.
No misconceptions. I just think there's a lot of history of, you know, indigenous peoples in the U.S. that doesn't get out there very much. You know, it's like I don't know if people. I don't know. So I don't. The correct answer is I haven't seen anything. But you know, I think we say, oh, do you know about our boarding schools? And a lot of people have said no, right? And that's a major thing. Do you know about the, you know, the polio and chickenpox things that happened in the 1400s? You know, right, or you know, when white people came over. You know, so just no misconceptions. Just maybe not the full knowledge that of that. I don't know if that answers that question.
Well, I think it's different too, like the experience with the first peoples on the East Coast and their interaction with Europeans being far different than with people from Ed's tribe or from Delbert tribe or clan. You know, it's a completely different interaction that happened, like the way that the French interacted with the native peoples in that area of Canada and the northern U.S., and you know how the English interacted with, like the 10 tribes, the Iroquois Nation, or Ajasani, which is the actual name of that tribe. Like our friend, we have a friend named Dennis Urey, who's been heavily involved over the last 50 years in doing jazz presentations along with Native American music. And he was involved with some of the great artists like Jim Pepper, great baritone saxophones, you know, on the East Coast. So jazz actually has had a lot of folks who have an indigenous background, especially back east. So it's kind of unique that Ed's vision and what we're doing, it's, you know, I think it's a lot different than what a lot of guys have had on the East Coast.
And I guess I'll say, unless you want to jump in there, I guess I'll say, like, this whole jazz, indigenous jazz thing didn't start with me. Like, it's been going on for years too. So, and that's something that I'm really happy with Delbert and his quartet, is like he's in this like leading edge, like he is like blazing a trail with his group, and it's just really cool to have these groups join each other to I'm not going to say super group, but like we're all playing music together and opening up people's eyes to the fact that indigenous music and indigenous musicians are out there. Would you say something like that? We're in a really good time right now.
Yeah. And it's probably the lack of knowledge of history, like you were saying. A lot of people don't really know where the histories of different cultures, but you know, it's kind of the way I always say. I say I'm Navajo, but I also say Diné. So Diné is sort of the more term that we like to be called because that's what we call ourselves. Diné basically means the people, but the reason why people call us Navajo is because during the Spanish War and they call it Spanish and Indian War, but it's actually like the Spanish and Apache and Navajo. We were kind of always at fight a while back, and Navajo was given to us from the Spanish, so that's not technically what we are called. That it's just because it was a popular thing. And I think things like Hollywood and videos, they still call us Indian, although we're not from India. But and then same with Canada. They like to be called not only First Peoples, but there's so many different tribes, and it's really hard to manage it and figure it out. But I always like to say, Navajo, because everyone basically knows what Navajo is, and they kind of know some history. But I also say, but Diné, that's kind of the term. So I try to put it in there, like what we would prefer to be called as a tribe versus what we're sort of kind of labeled as by other entities, such as like just sort of like media or Hollywood. Hollywood's really bad, like the video movies, and so but it's just you get used to it, and you start to realize the more you travel and get out there and start doing cross-cultural things and different residencies, you can find those things out, and it's like everyone's having that problem. Everyone's kind of going through the same thing.
I heard something last night. All right, so we have this. It was there we go. Whee! I was like, we do that too. We just go whee, a little lower, but like it was super cool because I was like those call and responses. I was like, that's totally Tlingit, and it's miles. I don't know, 12,000 miles away or whatever, 15,000 miles away from Alaska to here. I think that was a really big thing. For me, it's like, the movements are a little different from how we dance and things like that. But I have seen in Alaska, there's 5 major groups of Alaska Native people. So Alaska's huge, and so it's got Tlingit, Sugpiaq, Yupik, Inupiaq, and Athabaskan. And in the Yupik and Inupiaq, they have those like dance moves that was very similar to what I've seen last night and up in Alaska. It was really cool, just really active, moving, and shapes. So that's the one I think. The calls, like the sounds that they were singing. Did you see this? Did you see that?
I really connected with the melodies. They had 2 vocalists come in. And they have the similar, like almost like pentatonic scale, but they have the trios, and we do that in our culture because when we're doing chants, we have this swing sort of like, and then so it's like very similar, and it was very different. And I've been doing a lot of research, not with Nagaland specifically, but our culture is the Diné culture is very similar to Mongolian culture in ways that we build houses the same, we have the same diets, we like to wrestle. And so I haven't really done much research with Nagaland, but the music and it's just it looked like it was Elder. We were walking down, we were walking up, and I just kind of seen him, and he said, "Hey, brother," and I said, "Hey." So I think there's a connection. I don't know what it is yet, but there's definitely a connection there.
There was a story on how it became. I'm forgetting most of it, but they're saying the feathers flew down to start. The piece or something, and I was just thinking, I was like, our first song tonight is going to be something about feathers, and about our feathers fall. There's a flock of finches are falling or flying, and their feathers are falling down softly on a woman named Yekushita. So I was like, all right, birds, feathers. That's really like very similar, the songs that we have. So. It's an audible. So jazz is so open that we're going to be like, hey, we're going to play this song. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, but about 8 songs. Is that right? Is that what we got?
We have 9.
We have 9 total.
Might
So
not play all of them depending on what we do.
just
Well, and if
we feel the energy.
yeah, and if someone's really playing inspired, you know,
We just
sometimes it's like, you know, it's like church, right?
Testify, brother.
You know, and let them go. So, Delbert,
What church do you go to? Yeah,
Motivation.
so we play. We got a set list of 9, but like I said, jazz is so open, and we might just really be swinging. People are dancing, and you know whatever, or people are really into it. We might stretch out a little bit. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Jazz is so much based on improvisation, like we're talking about. So it could be, we could stretch it out or make it as short as we want, and that's, to me, is one of the beautiful things about jazz, is we're all bringing our own voices to it. We're listening to each other, and that's part of why we're able to bring in all of our different influences. And we can bring in music from all sorts of different cultures and add it to jazz, because jazz is about being open and listening and embracing its influences. And in its roots, jazz was a music that wasn't just from one thing. When it was first started, it was a combination of different sources. So especially the African American community, they had music, still some of their music from Africa, even though they had been enslaved for centuries. They hung on to as much of that music as they could, but then they still had all the European instruments around them and European musical influences, and they combined those things and created this unique new art form out of blending these things called jazz. And that's part of jazz that still exists, is we can bring all these different influences into it. And because we're open to it and listening to each other, we're able to quickly adapt. But that's also why we don't know exactly how many songs we're playing.
Yeah.
Because we might be listening to each other and just kind of change what we're doing on stage in the moment. It can always change, and that's one of the things I really love about music.
I 100% agree. So like we have a set list, but today's set list could be the same as tomorrow, but it could be a completely different show.
Yeah.
Like today and tomorrow, different things happen. We play how we feel, you know.
Well, and for example, especially with Michael and Ed, they played with me in different groups. Like I might have a preset plan and get there that night, and it's like I'll start calling tunes we've never played before.
Yeah.
And some of it's just like feeling the moment and go, hey, let's just randomly try something different. And then some of that is like forcing us to like really be creative and inventive, you know, and there's no expectations that we put on the music or on each other. It's like we're listening to each other and trying to respond and create. And then all of a sudden, like some of the coolest arrangements and things have come out of just like doing something on the fly. You know, we just call a song.
I think it's beautiful.
Amazing.
I mean, our friend Kachung, which is another band I play in called Bumua, he's doing an all indigenous festival in Alaska as well. And I think having a voice that's like main stage for Naga people is like absolutely important. Like, you know, just like having an opportunity for your musicians, your artists to be heard is one of the biggest things, because everybody talks about representation matters. Have you heard that? And you know that saying. And I think if you can share it, spotlight it, then it becomes worldwide and becomes the normal part of what we do in our culture. And I think that's very similar to another festival we're doing in Juneau, Alaska. That just says no, it's all indigenous artists. Boom. And so I like that. The Naga people have pride in their musicians and get to showcase that. I think that's important.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I've been really amazed by the pride that the Naga people have in their art and their culture and their history here. It's just, you can tell everyone is so excited about this festival and about sharing your culture with us and all these other people from all around the world. It just feels so welcoming, but also exciting for us to learn something about people that we didn't really know about. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really thrilling to be here.
No, we can continue.
Delbert, do you want to jump in on that last thing about?
So I also run a jazz festival in my hometown, and we focus on indigenous, just sort of artists, and also Latin artists, because you know there's we're in New Mexico, so there's a lot going on. but it was all about cross culture and giving sort of underserved areas sort of enlightenment of what we offer, because a lot of times the elders always say like the indigenous ways are some of the best ways, but they're all forgotten. And so when we have this mission of when we put indigenous artists and Latin artists on stage, they actually educate the audience of how these indigenous ways or Latin ways are helpful to today's problems and issues that we have. And it's so great that that there's an indigenous festival, because we get to kind of do it our way and do it the way like our elders or ancestors or mentors told us to move forward with it, and it's beautiful. So I think the more indigenous festivals we have, like the more educated the world's going to get, and hopefully someone up top listens, and and things will begin to be much better. I think that
festival just because of music. So I'm sure that you will carry forward the beauty of Nagas to the rest of the world as you travel around and play your beautiful music. But apart from that, what is the one thing, that one core memory that you have so far, which you will be carrying forward? Each of you can share one.
Can we think for a second? What's the one?
Well, I think the thing that struck me was the museum that we went to yesterday, that had all the different tribes and the history and the art, and I was talking with Delbert about this, just because he and I were kind of walking around together. It's like, wow, you look at this stuff, and it's that connection, like here, this is across the world from where we are in North America, and there's so many similarities. There are these sculptures that are like the totems that we see in the Pacific Northwest, in the tribes that are there. You see the headdresses that are similar to the Plains Indians, like the Apache and the Cherokee would use. The two women that Delbert was talking about who came in here last night, and the four that were at the airport and at the dinner, the sounds and the phrasing and the rhythm, like how that is so similar to what we hear, where we are from those tribes. So it's like there's way more that connects everybody across the world if we actually take a minute to just look, and then go, hey, guess what? I guess people are kind of the same all over the world, and I think that takes a long way towards not just understanding other cultures, but in terms of being a human being. It's like we're all kind of trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to live together and, make wherever we are better for ourselves, our families, those around us. And, that's how we all move forward, I think, too. And by looking back and how much actual culture we actually share that goes back to our ancestors, So.
I think for me was, and I forget his name, our cab driver, Ben.
Oh,
or
liaison.
We got to sit down and eat and really hear like the goals he was getting for, and I just felt like that was so, because we kind of went through something similar, and he's a vocalist, and we're gonna miss his show, but he's playing later. And but it was so nice to sit down with local and just really talk it out. And very similar. There's something else that goes along with that is I don't know if it's just because maybe they know we're not from Nagaland, but there's always like some kind of humorous interaction all the time, or at least when I've like talked with just like someone who's working at the soup place or a restaurant, they're always just like like kind of smiling, and they're just like so there's always that like we always start with humor, and I always that it's a lot like my tribe is like that, so it really reminded me of like home, and just being in it, and really getting to connect with the locals has been really, really fun. That's, yeah, so far, yeah, it's been great.
I think on a very superficial level, just the natural beauty here in the towns on like clinging to the mountaintops is just, it's something I'll never forget, all the views and everything, the sights, but on a more like emotional, visceral level. Kind of like I was saying earlier, just the pride that the Naga people have in their culture and everything is just, it's so overwhelming, and you really like feel it from everyone, and how this festival is like a real representation of that. I'll definitely never forget that.
Can I bring up my Nagaland coffee cup? No. Okay, so something that I feel strongly about is, thank you. That's super cool. So to see a Naga person on a coffee cup, I know it's kind of weird, but I was just like looking at it, I was like, you've got an indigenous person on a label. Like, it's respectfully done. And I know that in my hometown and Southeast Alaska, we try to use that culture, the culture in everyday life. And I think sharing that here is amazing, to see that culture alive and being used. And a little bit about tying what Delbert said about, the spinning songs. It gets all mixed up and then comes out with something new. I think that if we don't use that, then it becomes a dead culture. So I love seeing the culture, being shared. That's really inspiring to me. Being from, half a world away, and seeing that the culture is being used. So I really, that inspires me. Oh boy, how long do you got? I'll just, I could say a name, but unless you listen to the music, you don't know. So I'm a big fan of Art Blakey and his Jazz Messengers, so that's my influence. But I think one of the cool things about this band, especially when we first started, we've got a song that I wrote that I had one specific song in mind. And if you know jazz, you probably know this song, but it's called Hot Ya Day, and it starts with dum 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 dum. If I just did that, if you're a jazz musician, you'd be like, that's Benny Golson's Killer Joe, right? And so I kind of like took those changes to make some of my songs. And so influences, I really like taking changes, not quite contrafacts, but like almost like taking little motifs off of them. And so that's kind of my thing. I like taking jazz standards, like that songbook, right, that I talked about, and using those chord changes to put my melodies over the top. That's kind of a cool thing about the music for me.
If given an opportunity, will your band be willing to collaborate with any of the bands or the traditional?
Do you
have any plans?
Anytime. Yeah. I love the Welsh singer collaborated with the singer last night. I thought that was beautiful. I think what Reuel said is like, we're more similar than we are different if we look deeply, and it's just like, and that's will make this world even better. Just the understanding that we have, we can do things together without sacrificing who we are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's special for anybody, not just Naga. That's like the world. It's like if we can work together, we can make kind of this a better place.
Well, and with jazz, what I found in terms of the best groups and the people that I love to play with, and this group has definitely been one of those, because it's really, we always kind of talk about it, how it's kind of it's a democracy, but it's more than that. It's more a family, and we all have certain roles that we're trying to fulfill, and we're all trying to work together for a common goal. And I think that's probably what's made this the most fun for me over the years, is that, the guys are always willing to, hey, what if we did this? Mm-hmm. And going out and taking the risk and trying something, like, we've never tried this, let's try this. It might work, it might not, but we're doing it together. You know what I mean? And we're listening to each other, and we're trying to find ways to make it, musical and fun, and to me, I think that's one of the best things about it, is that one of my mentors is a great pianist from Jamaica named Monty Alexander, and he said, "We're in the serious business of having fun." And that's, to me, that is what jazz is about, but especially with this group. Like, some of the ideas, it's like, hey, let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, well, it didn't work. But, taking risks is what life is about anyways, right? If you're always playing it safe, you're not really going to go anywhere. You're not going to attain anything. And you always need to take a risk. Like, even us being in this room, meeting with you guys. We don't know you, you don't know us, but we're taking a risk because we're trying to connect. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and I think to that point, one of my elders from where I'm from, they always said there's a lot of power in differences, but a lot of people think like if you both are the same thing, you're stronger. But if you both are the same thing and you run into a situation that you don't know how to get out of, you both fall. whether if you get with someone who knows something different, another person, one might fall, but the other can pick back up or take over. So it's like I guess to make it easier, it's like let's just say I don't know how to change a tire, but Reuel knows how to change a tire, and if we lose a tire, Reuel can get us out. But if we both don't know how to change a tire, then we're stuck. We've got to find someone. So there's power in the differences, like where we're all coming from. We might be able to reach levels we never could reach because of maybe Michael has an insight that we're not seeing, and so it's nice to see like him go forward, and it's like, wow, I didn't know we could do that, and so it just builds everyone up. And as far as sort of like influences, I have a lot of trumpet players and everything, and it's really hard for me to choose. But I think I'm more like as I'm getting older, it's like I'm really valuing a lot of my mentors, and a lot of my mentors, they don't play music. They're more of just like I guess you could say more like on the philosophy side of things. But I tend to bring that to the music, and it's really shaping. Like it's making me play differently, kind of. I try to really study and do certain things, but also there's a lot of people who study and do those types of things. So it's like my culture is making me different, and the way I'm teaching and learning. So a lot of my mentors, and they're not all from my tribe. I have, like I said, Gargi Shindi from the Indian tribe. Chris Beatty, who's more of within the university, like teaching things, and so it's all over the place. Yeah.